Imagine embarking on a journey from the historic streets of London to the vibrant heart of Berlin. For decades, the mere suggestion of making that 1,200-kilometer trek in an electric vehicle without stopping for a recharge was dismissed as a fantasy, a dream tethered to the reality of charging cables and agonizing wait times. We have officially crossed the threshold where range anxiety transitions from a logistical nightmare into a relic of the past. The status quo of the automotive industry has long been defined by compromise. But research shows that the psychological barrier of limited range has been the primary anchor preventing mass adoption. Now, engineers have developed a powertrain architecture that shatters these constraints, effectively doubling what we once considered the ceiling of battery efficiency. Because we are standing at the precipice of a total mobility shift. As global infrastructure struggles to keep pace with the rapid surge of EVs, the burden of range has weighed heavily on the consumer. By obliterating the 1,000-kilometer barrier, manufacturers are no longer just selling a car, they are selling absolute freedom. In this series, we will dissect the breakthroughs that made this leap possible. We aren't looking at incremental updates or minor software tweaks, we are witnessing a fundamental recalibration of physics as applied to personal transit. This isn't merely about driving further, it's about the erosion of the last significant argument against the electric transition. Prepare to rethink everything you know about battery capacity, power density, and the future of the open road. The era of the short-leash electric vehicle is drawing to a close. Let us begin by examining the core innovation that makes this unprecedented distance a tangible reality. For over a decade, the electric vehicle narrative was shackled to a rigid constraint, the 600-kilometer ceiling. It became the industry's invisible barrier, a psychological threshold where the anxiety of the dead battery outweighed the allure of silent, instantaneous torque. Engineers spent years optimizing the chemistry of lithium-ion cells, squeezing every possible milliamp hour out of nickel-cobalt-manganese cathodes. We achieved incremental gains, a 5% bump here, a refined cooling system there, but we were merely perfecting an aging architecture. The battery was a heavy, dense brick of potential energy, and for a long time, we were simply fighting the physics of its own weight. The pressure to shatter this plateau didn't come from a sudden scientific epiphany, but from the relentless demand of the open road. Consumers grew tired of the tethered lifestyle. They demanded the freedom of the combustion engine without the carbon footprint, forcing manufacturers into a desperate, high-stakes arms race. To break through the 1,200-kilometer barrier, the industry had to pivot from mere iteration to a fundamental reimagining of energy density. We shifted the focus from the quantity of the storage to the quality of the medium. The transition into solid-state electrolytes and silicon anode integration marks the most significant leap since the invention of the rechargeable cell. By swapping volatile liquid electrolytes for stable, high-density solid materials, we have unlocked a landscape where energy is packed tighter and safer than ever before. This is the shift from a sluggish, heavy reservoir to a high-pressure conduit of power. The goal was never just to go further, it was to change the very relationship between the machine and the road. We are no longer designing vehicles that survive a commute, we are engineering vessels that outlast the driver's own endurance. But as we push into this new frontier of extreme range, one question remains: how does this shift in capacity redefine the infrastructure we once thought was essential? To understand how a machine covers 1,200 kilometers on a single charge, we must peel back the chassis and look at the molecular architecture. Conventional lithium-ion batteries are like crowded subway cars during rush hour. The liquid electrolyte acts as a chaotic, sluggish medium where ions struggle to navigate through a dense, flammable crush of obstacles. It is a system that demands bulk to compensate for its own inefficiency. By replacing the fluid with a solid ceramic or glass separator, we aren't just making the battery safer, we are fundamentally changing the rules of density. Think of it as upgrading from a gravel road to a frictionless maglev track. Ions no longer need to weave through a swampy, liquid labyrinth. Instead, they zip across a streamlined, solid interface. When you eliminate the need for heavy, bulky cooling systems, because these solid cells don't have the same volatility as their liquid ancestors, you shed the dead weight that usually anchors an electric vehicle to the charger. We are essentially swapping a heavy, waterlogged sponge for a hyper-compressed, high-density diamond. This isn't merely about adding more cells, it is about making every single atom pull its weight. In these new architectures, the anode is often refined with silicon-carbon composites, acting like a high-capacity reservoir that holds more energy than the traditional graphite sponges we have relied on for decades. By shrinking the physical footprint of the energy storage while simultaneously ballooning the capacity, the vehicle ceases to be a slave to the grid. We are moving toward a reality where the battery is not an appendage bolted onto the frame, but a structural component of the car itself, a spine that carries its own life force. As we move from the era of recharge anxiety to a landscape of near-limitless mobility, the physics of our daily commute begins to collapse. If the vehicle no longer needs the road to provide its energy, what happens to the massive, multi-billion-dollar network of chargers currently being paved across the horizon? The answer lies in a fundamental shift of geography. We are witnessing the end of the tethered commute. For the daily driver, the garage becomes a monthly habit rather than a nightly chore. We are moving toward a future where energy is a background utility, invisible and abundant, rather than a frantic, time-sensitive necessity. If a vehicle can traverse the entire length of a country on a single charge, the frantic race to populate every parking lot with cables loses its urgency. For long-haul logistics, the implications are tectonic. The trucking industry, historically shackled by the physical limitations of battery weight and downtime, now stares at a new horizon. We aren't just talking about a more efficient way to move goods, we are talking about a total reconfiguration of how our cities are supplied. The friction of distance is finally being smoothed out by the sheer density of modern energy storage. We are reclaiming our time. When the range exceeds the human capacity to stay awake behind the wheel, the limitation is no longer the machine, it is the traveler. We have spent years trying to force the electric vehicle to mirror the constraints of the combustion engine. We have traded the frantic search for a plug for the freedom of the open road, proving that the true catalyst for adoption isn't just a cleaner engine, it's the removal of the compromise. The horizon is no longer a boundary, it is an invitation. As we stand at this threshold, one question remains: now that the map is finally wide open, where will you go first? Subscribe and hit the bell to stay ahead of the curve as we track the final evolution of the electric age.